So it's on Umbrella Saturday again. And as usual, there's a high impact weekly webinar hosted by Umbrella, Africa's marketplace for startup investment and exits. Each Saturday, we bring together visionary founders, seasoned investors, expert advisors, and corporate leaders to exchange insights, unlock capital, and build the next generation of Africa's success stories. Today, unlike the usual practice where I go through the slides, I will be introducing the team for today, which is from courses to confidence with Karen Chukwu. She's the founder and managing partner for Katwig Dale. And today, we'll be going beyond just the regular pitch deck and prototype into what we call the legal backbone for every startup and everything that startup needs.
They actually even reached out to me. I already knew them, so when you told me about them, I said,
sorry for that. So yeah, the legal backbone every startup needs to scale confidently. Whether you're fundraising or you're signing your first term sheets or you're structuring your co-founder agreement, understanding the legal clauses that shape the startup future is not negotiable. To be with us today, we have Karen, and while every other person keeps joining, Karen, I would yield the mic to you to do some form of introduction. Tell us what you do at Katwig and Dale, and then if you have your slides, I'll be happy to let us go into it today. Welcome.
Hi everyone, morning. I hope we're having a restful Saturday, at least so far, and I hope we have plans for this evening. Right, so I'm gonna share my screen. Yeah. Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Oh, yes, we can.
Perfect. Great. So let's get right into it. So my name is Karen. I am the managing partner at Katwig and Dale. I'm an information technology and intellectual property lawyer. A lot of the work that I do really is just to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 8, which is decent work and economic growth across sub-Saharan Africa. So over the past decade, I've worked across high courts, federal high courts. I've worked under the mentorship of SANs in Nigeria. I established Katwig and Dale. So far, I've worked with over 70 plus startups, providing legal support to them, likewise entrepreneurs and investors who are passionate about Africa. Still over the past decade, I have obtained my LLB degree, a master's in IT/IP law, an MBA, and some certifications across Stanford and Harvard Business School. And now I lead a research project actually that's focused on designing strategies that help startups grow sustainably in sub-Saharan Africa. And my work is backed by UK Research Institute and also backed by one of China's most influential entrepreneurs. So that's a little bit about me. And today, well, we're going to be talking about what to think about as a founder, when you either set up your startup or you're currently running it, right? Just a food for thought, right? From day one, it's important to get your legal structure, set, right? The foundation of anything really is
Sorry, Karen, to stop you. I don't know, your screen is still loading. I don't know if you want to just exit and
let
get
me
back on
see.
slideshow.
Give me a second, please.
That's fine.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can. I think once you put it on a slideshow, we can try to see that. Yeah.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, perfect. Right. So, what to think through as either an early stage founder or a founder who has attained growth stage, right? And a food for thought, I was saying earlier, is the first thing to think about is it's not vibes. When you run a business, it's never vibes. The foundation of anything really is important. I mean, if you're going to set up a house or build a house, right, you would need a solid foundation. The reason why you would find buildings collapsing or having structural defects, if you check, you see that their foundation, wasn't done right. They probably dug for maybe 2 floors and then added an additional 3, 5 floors, right? It just goes to show that the foundation of anything is important. So first things first, right? When you set up a startup, if you're doing it alone, well, thumbs up. If you're going to be the captain of that ship alone, that's good for you. But if you have co-founders, right, you want to ensure that you're getting into, in quotes, that marriage contract with them. And I call it a marriage because you have more than one person coming together to build something, and you want to be certain as to what your responsibilities are to each other. So the first thing is you need clear contracts. Friendships can change. I've literally seen people who are even blood relatives, have issues about money. And when you set off building your business, you may not have all the money that you have, but money definitely reveals, part of people that you never saw before, right? So of course, to protect your business and to protect your relationship, everything has to be black and white. Don't leave any room for assumptions or ambiguities. Simply put, I don't like plenty talk, right? So let's have all the difficult conversations at the onset and let's have a smooth sailing relationship. We have a client who approached us recently, and they got into a deal. Their startup got a federal contract, right, that they were working on. And, the founder of the entity, brought in a relative. Now, it turns out the relative has, absconded with, over 40 something million naira, cannot be accounted for. And these are some of the issues. Now, what this is doing to their relationship, their personal relationship, is it has broken down, and might I say irreversibly so. Another thing to note is legal issues, within startups, within businesses in general, are one of their silent killers, right? Because I mean, whilst you're building and you're designing all the right strategies, you go back to the drawing board, and you get your knee deep into things. When legal issues start to erupt, you find that it changes your focus as a founder, right? It gets you derailed from the day to day. It gets you derailed from what you're supposed to be doing to onboard the right customers, to keep the business going, to generate as much revenue as much as possible. A very good example of this is the issue that Zuckerberg had with the Winklevoss twins, where they had alleged that they were the ones that came up with the Facebook idea and all of that. Anyways, at the end of it all, it ended in a huge payout in millions of dollars, I think about 60 something or so. No business ever wants to let go of that amount of money or any amount of money for any reason, especially knowing that it could have been avoided by being very clear, at the onset. Now, for startups that are looking to raise, external funding, right? Think about it. Let's take off the founder hat and wear the hat of an investor, right? Are you going to put money in any business that is not clear, that you're not certain of their legal structure, that have not documented the right things, that pretty much run on ambiguity? I personally wouldn't put my money in that kind of business because while startup investing is a risky kind of investment, right? I'm not going to deliberately even put my money in anything that's even more riskier than what is usually obtainable. And that's something to think through, right? Investors are trying to see that you are clear as a founder. They're trying to back, entities that have been set up the right way, that have the right legal structure, etc. And just a food for thought again. Startups don't fail because they lack ideas. They fail because they ignore proper legal and business structure. That's just something to keep at the back of your mind, anyways, as we go through this session. Today, I'm going to be talking through, the founders agreement, business formation and regulatory compliance. Regulatory compliance, very key. So please put that down somewhere in your notes. I'm going to talk through tailored contracts, intellectual property protection and valuation, and of course, fundraising and investor readiness. Because I'm sure some of you on this call probably want to, hear more about fundraising and how to get your investors feeling a lot more confident about your business. Right. Okay, good. So I mentioned earlier that when you get into a business deal with your co-founders, it's like a marriage contract, right? When two people come together, you expect that they're going to go to the registry and say, "Oh, hi, we want to get married and we want to be accountable to each other and things like that. So would you preside over this for us and let's sign the necessary documents and all of that and take all the nice pictures and bid you guys farewell as we venture into this relationship or this marriage." That's what a founders agreement is like, right? Do not rely on my brother man, my boss, I did for you, my boss, you be my guy now. Never rely on that, right? Because that you be my guy. When they start dragging you, you obviously won't be able to sleep, right? Even if the person is your brother, your child, your cousin, I don't want to know. It's very, very important that you have a founders agreement between yourself and your co-founders. Now, what does this agreement do? It sets out the terms clearly. So you want to talk about the equity split, right? This is oftentimes a very difficult conversation for co-founders, or how we're going to split equity, right? And you go through the back and forth, the negotiations and all of that. When you're done with that, right, you want to have that clearly in black and white, right? What do exit strategies look like for the founders, for the co-founders? How are we going to make decisions together within the entity? Is the CEO the only one, who makes decisions on behalf of the entity? Do we have to approach the CTO, or do we have to approach CFO, etc.? Whichever chief you want to approach, right? Just making these things clear. Now, what are our individual roles and responsibilities to the startup, the business that we're about to set up, right? You want to make these things clear, because tomorrow, if I'm not delivering, right, how are you going to hold me accountable? If we don't have, an agreement, if we don't have a document that sets it out clearly, this is what accountability looks like, to us. How are we going to hold each other accountable? And this is where you start seeing that there are ambiguities, there are loopholes, and of course, issues are going to arise. I spoke about equity earlier. You also want to talk through, vesting, right? What's the vesting schedule going to look like? How long, is our equity going to vest for? These are things to pretty much discuss. And I always say, when you get into any relationship, whether it be a friendship, a romantic relationship, a business relationship, the onset is always the important time to have those difficult conversations. Because if you shy away from having the difficult conversations and, having this clearly established and documented, the rest of the journey is going to be a complete heartache for you. I've seen issues of co-founders, fighting over, "Oh, you were supposed to do this, you didn't do this and that." And then someone says, "Well, I'm out, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore," right? And the truth is, if you want to go far, right, you have to go together. If you want to go fast, go alone. I can't think of any startup, right, that is being run just by one person. Whether or not you have a co-founder, you also require other people to help in steering the ship. I mean, the captain, yes, is going to steer the ship, but there are other people that ensure that the day-to-day on that ship is going smoothly, which is where, you either have your co-founders or your team, right? When we talk about vesting, right, it's pretty much to ensure there's a commitment from everyone on board. I mean, think about it. Myself and Ayola set up a business, right? And we both say, okay, we're going to split 50-50, right? All good and fine. And then from day one, we each have our 50% equity in the company. And then maybe tomorrow, the UN is probably calling me and saying, "Oh, Karen, we'd like you to come and work on something, in Djibouti and this and that." And the benefits are so amazing. I'm like, hey, so this kind of benefits exist even. And I'll call Aya and say, see, my guy, you can continue with the startup. Oh, I'm not, see, please don't tie me down. Don't be an enemy of progress. Do you want to truncate my destiny? And I pack my load and I go. But I'm going with 50% of the entity because there was no vesting schedule. Now, because Ayo is passionate about solving the problem that our business was set up to solve, he keeps going at it, right? It's a classic example of babu they walk, monkey they chop. Because you see that 50% that we didn't subject to vesting, I've carried it. I'm cashing out. I'm working with the UN. I'm having a good time. The sun is out in Djibouti, and I'm having an amazing time. But Ayo is working tirelessly round the clock, right? And I'm reaping the benefits after only just staying for what, maybe 3 months or 6 months with the startup. But I hold a whole 50% equity, of which the other person stayed back and is working, and I'm away. But I hold that and I'm going to get the benefits. So these are some of the things to think through, right? When it comes to ensuring that you have a vesting plan, a vesting schedule in your founders agreement. And again, food for thought. So you're going to see food for thoughts coming up uh, in my slides. Something to note is a solid founders agreement clarifies expectations. It provides a roadmap for your journey together as co-founders. It prevents future conflicts, right? And the question to ask yourself is, would you rather have a clear agreement or, just make assumptions as you go, right? Let's just see how it goes. Anyhow, we'll rough it up together. No, that's not how it should be. And that's something to always have at the back of your mind.
All right, Karen, let me ask you a question. Would you want the session to be that you go through all your slides? Previous sessions we've had founders raise their hand at some point, ask questions, get clarity.
Please ask me questions. Please, if you have any questions, just jump right into it and wave your hand and say, hi, Auntie I, Auntie I. I'm not an auntie anyways, but
All right, no problem. Thank you.
right, right. Okay, yes. So we move on now to, the business formation and regulatory compliance. This is very important, right? Because when you set up a business, you want to know, oh, what kind of legal entity am I going to set up this business as, right? Do I want it to be a sole proprietorship? Do I want it to be a partnership or a limited liability company, right? And this is the context of Nigeria. And I mean, if you're a startup, right, to even qualify as a startup in Nigeria, under the Nigerian Startup Act, you must be registered as a limited liability company. If you're already registered as a sole proprietorship or a partnership, you're given about, I think, a 6 months period to change the entity to an LTD so that you can actually get that status. Oh, yes, you're a startup, right? Now, if depending on the business of your startup, there's so many things to consider, right? Because we have clients who say, well, I want to register elsewhere and I also want to be registered in Nigeria. It all depends, are you looking to raise external funds? Is the business that your startup is looking to solve, are you going to have clients or customers or end users only in Nigeria, or are you looking to serve customers across board, etc., right? Another thing to think about as well is, what country will I have this business registered in, right? That I would have peace of mind. If you understand what I'm saying, if you get it, good. If you don't get it, forget about it. I'll give you an example, hopefully to avert your attention to what I'm speaking about. So sometime in 2021, there was this issue with Emirates Airlines and the Nigerian government. Today they say, okay, we're back, we're operating. Then tomorrow they're like, no, we haven't been able to repatriate our funds from Nigeria, and so we're not going to operate. Then they came back and said, okay, we're going to fly. I think we're going to have 7 flights leaving Nigeria weekly, and that's about that. And then they stopped, and it's been like a tussle, back and forth, or rather it was at the time back and forth. And their bone of contention, was we're doing business in Nigeria, but we haven't been able to repatriate our funds amounting to millions of USD. right? So these are some of the things that, founders are thinking through. Okay, if we generate profit in this region, are we going to be able to get the money out, right? What does compliance look like in this region, right? What are the business laws in this region? Are they favorable for founders like myself? Are they favorable for the kind of business that we're running? I think sometime in 2023 or so, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of US banks that were serving startups globally shut down, they stopped providing access to Nigerian startups from Niger and a couple of other countries as well, because they view them as high risk. So these are some of the things to consider in terms of the ease of doing business when you're setting up an entity for your business, right? You find that a lot of startups, these days go to Delaware because Delaware, is pro management in terms of their laws. They're pro the management team of the entity. And you have quite a plethora of options as well. You can either register as a limited liability partnership or as a corporation, either C or S Corp, but it's always best to go for a C Corp, even though you'll be taxed twice. Another thing to
Karen, can
think
you put
through.
some clarity to that? C corps, S corps. Can you just put some clarity to that?
So S corps are treated like sole proprietorships are, right? A C corp is a lot more similar to the Nigerian version of a limited liability company. Now, the C corp again favors the management team, and if you notice, when we speak about startups, you're looking at the co-founders and all of that, right? Where you're going to have your president, your CEO, and all of that. But in terms of how they're viewed, right? You don't want to set up an entity that is viewed as a sole proprietorship, because a sole proprietorship is a one-man business. Your startup most likely is not going to be a one-man business. Over time, even if you say it by yourself, over time you're going to bring in co-founders or whatever and all of that, and you're going to have shareholders. Another thing to note as well is with an S corp, you can't have above 100 shareholders. Yes, you can't have above 100 shareholders. But with a C corp, especially for a startup that's looking to raise external funds, right? You want to have, pre-seed, you probably have maybe 12. You get to see it, the numbers of shareholders are increasing. By the time you're at your Series A, you want to cap yourself and say, okay, we are only going to have only, 100 shareholders. So these are the things to think through when deciding on the type of entity. And this is for Delaware, right? There's some people that go ahead and register in other states, but for free, I'll tell you, Delaware has always been a good place to register your startup because, again, they're very transparent, they're pro management, they make it very easy actually compared to other places, right? And what we've seen over the years as well is investors, have a lot more confidence if they're going to invest in, a US based entity. They want to see that, oh, this entity has been registered in Delaware. Unless you're looking for investors in other countries, and again, this is what you think through when you're going to decide, oh, what country do I want to set up my business in? Right. You also find that founders do set up foreign entities because, again, you're trying to protect the interest of both yourself and your co-founders, the interest of the entity in general, and the interest of your investors if you do have any. Right. So moving on, this is where we speak about, the sector licenses, permits, etc. And this is pretty much regulatory compliance, right? And regulatory compliance is pretty straightforward in terms of understanding it. What am I supposed to do as a business to show that I respect the laws, that I respect the powers that be, right? That show that I'm compliant, that show that I'm doing the right things, that show that I'm taking the right steps to ensure that I'm not doing anything illegal with my business. So this is what regulatory compliance is all about. And for every business, right, you have to operate within a certain industry, or your business will be viewed as operating or falling under a certain industry. Now, industries have different, regulatory compliance requirements. For example, what's obtainable in the oil and gas industry is going to be different from what's obtainable in the finance industry or even in the legal industry, right? And it's very important for you to focus on this because if you're not regulatory compliant, right, you stand a chance of either getting fined. You obviously, the boogeyman or the hangman is going to come for you, right? You could also get lawsuits as well, right? Not just from regulatory bodies, but also from your customers. If they see that this business is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, well, a class action can be brought against your business. And again, if you're a startup, you really don't want to spend time, trying to resolve disputes here and there or going to court and all of that. Like I said earlier, it derails your focus as a founder from the day to day, the business, strategy design and implementation. And it takes you to, oh, you have to be in court, or oh, you have to be at this tribunal for this hearing and things like that. You don't want that. So things to think through, right? Or before I actually get to that, let me give an example. Let's say I run a crypto startup. Right. I'm like, crypto. I want to get into crypto. After all, there's a new Investment and Securities Act 2025. Nigeria is forging ahead. So I'm going to set up a crypto startup. Now, because I'm going to set up a crypto startup, right, I'm already operating in the financial industry. When you speak about the financial industry in Nigeria, what pops to mind? The CBN. That's the first thing. So you know that the CBN is going to be at least one regulatory body to look out for. What does the CBN require me to do? Well, in the circulars, they've said if you're going to run a crypto entity, if you're going to deal with crypto assets, right? Virtual assets, you need to have a virtual asset service provider license, a VASP license, right? That's one thing to note. Now, another thing is, well, SEC is now regulating crypto entities, because I don't know if you remember, but there was a tussle a couple of years back between the CBN and SEC who's going to regulate. CBN was like, I beg, we don't have time for that one. SEC was like, okay, we're the cool kids in town. We're going to come in and we'll show them how it's done, but we'll just dip one leg in. We will not dip the other leg in. Let's just be safe. But now SEC is fully regulating, crypto entities as well. And then the next question is, what do I do to be able to ensure that I'm complying with SEC? And please stop me if you do not get something clearly. Let's walk our way back to the Startup Act, right? To qualify as a startup, limited liability entity and all of that, and you need to have a minimum of 10 million shares as a startup, right, in Nigeria. Now, when you approach SEC and you say, oh, we're a crypto entity, we're coming to do right by you, so you will not punish us and you will not, fine us and things like that. SEC is going to say, oh, good. Are you aware that you're supposed to have at least 500 million shares to be able to open your mouth to talk to us? Now you can see that compliance, right, starts to look like it's in murky water, or it starts to look like it's changing, right? But that's because, like I said earlier, different industries require different things. There's some industries where, even if you're a startup operating in that industry and you already have your 10 million shares, but to obtain a particular license, you're probably going to need at least 100 million shares or at least 25 million shares, right? So this is why you need to think through. And again, your lawyers, your legal team will help you with this. They would get on that discovery call with you and, understand your business and let you know, okay, this is your industry. These are the licenses that you need and all of that, right? And so, speaking about the licenses, okay, now that you found out, I need a VASP license, how long do I hold this license for before I am required to, renew, right? Okay, when is the due date for renewal? How long will this process take and all of that? Are there any monetary requirements that I need to make? For example, the CBN will say if you come to us for certain licenses, you have to lodge money in a certain account that we provide. We're going to hold that just in case. They're going to return it to you, but we're going to hold that just in case. And this is aside your registration fees and all of that, etc. So these are things to think through, just to ensure that, again, when you're regulatory compliant, right, investors will love you. They will love you because you're like, people that have their heads screwed on, right? Let's work with these people, please, because they know what they're doing. Right. An example of the recent issue is the ZAP, right? Paystack ZAP. where the CBN called them out and said, "Ah, you wouldn't get this license and you want to be operating in Nigeria? Really? Do we look like a joke to you?" So these are things to think through, right? Another thing as well is tax, right? It's very important for you to pay your tax. Paying your tax in any jurisdiction, whether you're in Nigeria or not, paying your tax is one way, that you show regulators, that you show investors, and even your end users that, oh, we're a compliant business. We collect and we give back to the government, we remit to the government, right? And you want to do this, because you want to ensure that you're avoiding problems as much as possible. I've seen situations of, people who say, but tax amount is high, we're still a baby business, this and that, this, all good and fine. And this is where there is tax evasion, where you use the legal means to there's tax evasion and avoidance, right? Using legal means to cut down your tax as much as possible, and then the other one is you just running away. You don't want to pay tax at all. Which of them do you think you'll be caught for? Of course, if you avoid paying tax, you're definitely going to be sued, and that's a big problem entirely. In Nigeria, the FIRS will come for you, or the State Inland Revenue Service will come for you. I don't know if you came across there's some posts anyways where you do have some celebrities that come up and say, oh, LIRS just wrote me, they said I'm owing tax of so and so million naira and this and that. Of course they're going to write you, you're not paying your tax. How do you expect things to be done in the country in terms of fixing the roads and doing the necessary things in the country? It's from the money that we pay, which is also why when you pay your tax in any jurisdiction, you're a lot more confident. You have this confidence to demand things from the government because you're doing the needful, as any law-abiding citizen will do, right? And when we speak about tax as well, of course, you know that your tax as an individual, as an entity, your employees, of course, need to pay their tax and need to remit their tax as well. These are very key things. Another thing to look out for is compliance, HR compliance, in the sense that, like I said earlier, there's always going to be a captain of the ship, right? But the people, the crew members ensure that that ship is probably not going to get a dent somewhere where water can come in, or they ensure that there's food in the kitchen for the rest of the crew. They ensure that the customers on the ship are well catered to, and all of that, right? And because of that, the captain is not necessarily the most important person on that ship. The most important people on the ship are the people who actually ensure that that ship is working well on a day to day. The people who have boarded that liner or that ship are comfortable. I don't know if you've watched the Titanic movie, but we saw instances where the live band, they kept playing and all those kind of things to help people feel calm and not panic and all of that. Do you think the captain was the most important person on the ship? No, it was those people who stayed back and they were doing the job they were supposed to do. The people who were putting coal and taking out coal and trying to move people and trying to organize people. Those people are the most important people on the ship. So whether you like it or not, if you like, be the CEO, CTO, that's your business, that's your title. Can go and put it under your pillow and sleep at night. Your team, very, very important. Why? You woke up one morning and you said, Eureka, I've come up with this nice idea, right? You believe in it so much. But then, in the process of, actualizing that idea, solving that problem rather for your customers, you get other people on board. These people didn't wake up with you to say, Eureka, us too, we thought about the idea. No, you sold them the idea. They got on it. They show up every day and they get their job done. The ones who are handling customer complaints and all of that, they are there. Your developers, they are there. You know, everyone is working together to ensure that the business is growing. And the truth is, a chain is only as effective as its weakest link. Once it's a weak link, that's it. So it's all done for. It's not useful anymore, right? And so ensuring that you're complying with labor laws in whatever jurisdiction you hire from is very, very important. I think there's someone who's unmuted.
Boka, do you have a question?
Anyways, so it's very important to think through the labor laws in whatever jurisdictions that you're in. If you're going to hire from Nigeria, comply. If you're going to hire from the US, comply. If you're going to hire from Kenya, comply. But it's also good to have, a uniform model across board. You don't want to be seen as favoring American hires or British hires over Nigerian hires. Is that really what you want to look like as a business? Automatically, once customers get the wind of that, they're not going to trust your business because you're not being fair across board. I did move to this page by mistake, but it's good that we're here still. Now let's speak through tailored contracts, right? So I know that people don't like us lawyers. Anyways, I don't know about you guys, but I know that people don't like us lawyers because they keep saying that I can go on Google and get a template and just do some things here and there. Okay, it's the same Google that if I tell them I have a runny nose and this, they'll tell me that they'll ask me why haven't you bought your coffin yet? I don't trust Google for medical advice. I go to my doctor. The reason is because when you go to your doctor, you're going to get tailored medical support. Tests would have been done and all of that. And they will say, it's just a blocked sinus. We can clear this out in less than 2 hours, and you're good to go, right? The same thing applies when, you speak about legal, right? Yes, you can get templates anywhere, and that's fine, right? But it's important to ensure that your contracts, whatever contracts you sign, whatever you append your signature on, right, is tailored to your particular need, is tailored to that particular context, right? No two business deals are ever the same, right? I could get into a business deal, say with a Chinese manufacturer to probably supply me with linen, right? And I could get into another one to supply me in another business deal with a leather manufacturer in Kano to supply me with some leather, right? Now, both contracts, right, are purchase agreements. I want to purchase linen from the guy in China. I want to purchase leather from the man in Kano. But there are different things to think through. As a Nigerian, I'm dealing with a Chinese businessman now, right? And let's factor in location. The man is in China. I'm in the UK, and the question you start thinking through is what law is going to govern us now? Should Kasala just bust? What law are we going to use to govern this agreement? That's the first thing to think through. With the one in Kano, we can say, okay, I can forego my location and say, well, I'm Nigerian, so I'm very happy with Nigerian laws to govern this deal. All good and fine. Let's say the worth of the linen I'm purchasing in China is worth about 500,000 USD, right? And the worth of the leather I'm purchasing in Nigeria is worth about, let's say, 100 million naira, right? Or maybe 50 million naira. Wait, that's it, yeah. You start thinking through, how are we going to resolve disputes? Do I want to be going to court every day to go and chase 500,000 US dollars? My kidneys that I sold. You want to think through what's the best way to navigate these disputes? How will I put my mouth to beg for my money back, right? That's for the deal in China. As you can see, even though it's still me purchasing something from, vendors, right? There's still different, there are nuances, there are differences in the context of our business deal. And that's why tailored agreements are very, very key. For example, the guy in China says to me, hi Karen, well, we only deliver to Abuja. Can you sort out how to pick it up from Abuja and get it to Lagos, for what you need it for, right? You start thinking through logistics, and all of these things have to be key in the agreement. Who is handling insurance? Am I going to handle it? Are you going to handle it? The guy in Kano says to me, Karen, no problem. Ba wahala, we'll send it to you in Lagos, your doorstep. You know me now, we have done business before. These are the things to think through, and it just never it's never the same. It's really never the same. Yes, there are certain contracts that would have, specific clauses that you must look out for, which must be there. It's non-negotiable, right? But the context of each business deal is different, and the context that you will need contracts for are always different. That's something to have in mind. Now, you when you speak about your customers, right? One of the most basic contract that we sign every day without knowing. You see that terms and conditions. Ah, terms and conditions to put us inside trouble. No, no. Um, there is um there was a case I think sometime last year with Disney. A lady had purchased the Disney Plus, I think, right, and she agreed to the terms and conditions. Then she was at Disney World and had food, and I think she had food poisoning or so. Something was not just right, and she tried to sue. And then they reminded her, "Madam, do you remember that you agreed to our terms and conditions when you signed up on our streaming platform?" So these are some things to think through. Your first agreement with your end users is your terms and conditions, then your privacy policy, and if you like, make it airtight. The most important thing is it has to be tailored to limit your liability, right? And also to give assurance to your end users that, look, we're looking out for you. For example, your privacy policy, you want to limit yourself and say, we are not responsible, and things like that. But you also want to show them that, oh, these are the steps that we're going to take to ensure that we're protecting, your data, your private information, etc., and all of that. So please think through this. Again, like your contracts with your employees or your contractors, very key. Contracts with partners, oh, would integrate API, this and that. Better sign agreement to let it not just start and end at moonshot. You have the conversation at moonshot. The next thing people are saying integrating. Have an agreement, because once there are integrations, right, you want to limit your exposure. Likewise, ensuring that you're not held responsible for anything on your partner's end. And so there has to be an agreement, right? Who are your vendors? If depending on the kind of startup that you run, who are your vendors? You need to have agreements with these people, and they have to be tailored. Everything has to be black and white. Look, it doesn't matter if the negotiation takes 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. That's not your problem. The most important thing is that you get it right. I'll give an example of we did close out on an acquisition in South Africa just last month. One month, we're in June. Just last month, right? If I tell you how long the negotiation stage took, you ask me why I've not got to go and look for another profession. But the truth is, you need to have those back and forths. You need to have those difficult conversations, and you need to tailor the agreements that are coming out of whatever deal. You need to tailor them properly, because these things will save you in the long run, right? Very, very important. You don't want to lose money as a business. One of the key things to have in mind is, if you cut costs, right, your at least you generate enough profits and revenue, rather, if you're able to cut costs. The easiest way to do that is just cut costs. And so you cannot say, oh, I want to cut costs as a business, but then you're leaving a door open for you to assume a lot of legal risks that may interpret to you either paying fines or settling a matter either in court or out of court, and all of that. Please, to be forewarned is to be forearmed.
Harry, let me jump in here, right?
Yeah.
Is it possible as a founder, right, while the contracts and negotiations or agreements are going on, you can still continue the integrations? Let me put it that way. Or should the agreement be done before the integration? It takes a while with your technical team, right? You know how these things happen. You
Yeah,
tap
but it's very
API, you
important
want
to
to
get
see
the
if
agreement out of the way.
you
It's
said what?
very important to get the agreement out of the way. Very, very important. Very, very important. If you're already thinking it, get your legal team on board, let them start having the conversations and let them review whatever contract. For example, now you want to integrate Paystack on your platform, this and that. Let them sign the agreement to, let's read it, let's know what we're getting into, because again, once that is sorted, the efforts of your developers will not go in vain, because maybe there's an issue and they're saying, well, this clause has to be here, and the clause that has to be there says that maybe you need to give them 1.5 out of any transaction, 1.5% of any transaction, and all you probably stand to gain is maybe 0.25 or 0.1. That becomes a big problem. And if you've already started integrating, on your platform, obviously time has been expended. You've obviously shared access to certain things and all of that. So it's very important for the contracts out of the way, always out of the way first, before you get into it. But then typically, like if you're going to do like an integrations, right, those contracts are then they're not the type where you spend 2 months negotiating and all of that, right? Again, it also depends on the worth of the deal, right? If this is going to expose you to a lot of potential, high risks, right? You want to ensure that you've gotten that sorted, and out of the way before any other thing. I'm trying to see if I can give an example of, some people that have just gone in without contracting. If I do think of one, I would definitely share it on this call. Right. So moving on, we then talk about intellectual property. So by now, I believe that everyone on this call, knows the various types of IPs, from your copyrights, your trademarks, your patents, your trade secrets, your geographical indications, your design rights, industrial designs, etc. Right? What IP or intellectual property stands for is the creation of your mind that you have now taken steps to put out there, right? So let's say I think about this beautiful poem. It's just an idea. Once I put it down, once I put that thing down anywhere, either I type it down or I write it down, that now becomes my creation, right? And yes, it qualifies to be copyrighted. The thing, or rather, what I've noticed in Nigeria is, whilst we talk about intellectual property rights and we sing it and blow the trumpet and all of that, right? A lot of founders do not see that it's also another means of revenue generation. That's what a lot of founders don't know. But look at the big engineering entities, pharmaceutical entities, even fashion entities. They've made a lot of money from just issuing out licenses over a certain IP. A whole lot of money. Because take for example patents, right? Patents are for novel inventions, right? When you get your patent certificate over a particular invention, you hold that right for 20 years before it then goes into the public domain. So I've created something new, right, through my startup, right? 20 years I hold the patent for. Once it's been approved and I get my certificate, I'm now the patent holder for 20 years. If Ayola wants to come and do like a similar design or something like that, or go through the process I went through to get at a different, he has to come and meet me for a license. Like, Carrie, my guy, how far now? Let me just a little bit. Just give me now. Let me just, okay, I'll just use it for 1 year. Pay only 1 year, 12 months, that's all. And I'll look at him. Ayo. Now that you have called to my table, you have to pay. Money has to exchange hands if you want this license, right? And this is what happens. But before you get to that point, you need to also understand the value of the IP that you hold, right? You're not going to sell any land, which is a physical property, right? You're not going to sell it without valuing the land, because you could either price it or overprice it, right? So the same thing applies to intellectual property as well. You obviously, first of all, you protect, you value, and you put it out there that, oh, I hold the right over so and so. If you want to use, come on board, and I'm very happy to give you a license. But then again, these are not a lot of public information. These deals actually do happen, but it's not like you go and put it on Twitter, I'm selling license. So but anyways, it's very important as a startup, right? You're trying to build, your brand image, ultimately gaining some form of brand equity within the market, and it costs a lot of money, blood, tears, sweat, a lot of it, right? What is the point of building a brand and you have not taken steps to trademark the name? the logo, the slogan, the color of that logo, the color of the particular shade of that name and things like that, which is why we have the issue with Zap Paystack and Zap Africa. These things happen every day, but at this time it's hit close to home, and it's actually made this a reality for a lot of founders. Now they're scampering around. Have we protected? But you're legal now. Why didn't you say any things like that, right? They're already happening behind the scenes. So please, please, please protect your brand. It's very important.
So, Karen, one big question.
Yeah.
Takes the blame, the legal or the founders?
So a lot of startups don't. It's the founders. It's the founders. And please, if you're a founder, don't cut off my head, but it's the founders. Because legal will tell you, we need to trademark this, we need to apply for this, we need to do this. But again, a lot of founders don't prioritize legal. A lot of them think they can cut through certain corners and all of that, right? But when you get to seed, your investors are looking at you like, okay, you have been building. You've not even tried to even protect your IP, but you want to come and collect my hard-earned money. Oh yeah, now sit down there. Sit and be pitching to me. Keep pitching. I'm listening to you. So yeah, definitely. Another thing to look out for, trade secrets, right? Trade secrets are of monetary value. I personally don't know the formula for Coca-Cola. I don't know it. If you know it, please tell us, because I don't know of anyone who knows it. It's a major trade secret for Coca-Cola. Just like how some condiments businesses don't divulge, their secrets as to, oh, this is what we've mixed, this is what we've put, and they don't divulge those things, because if it gets in the public domain, they stand a chance to obviously lose the business that they have built. Because if another person can do the same thing and probably offer it out for maybe a lesser price, then why are you then there? There's really no need, really. So these are things to consider. That's why you hear the phrase NDA flying around. NDA, 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 NDA. Yes, yes. Sign that NDA. In fact, when someone just approaches you, give it to them. It's very important, because you're building something that's valuable. It might not look like that to you today, but over time, you stay focused on that dream, and you're building. You literally cannot afford for certain things to get out in the public domain. So please, 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 ensure that you actually protect your intellectual property of the business. And just something to note here, that when you have a legal entity, your startup, the holder of that IP is the startup, not the founder, not the CEO, not the CTO. It is the startup itself, because a startup, when it's a company, is a legal person on its own. It can sue, it can be sued, and all of that. So the holder, the owner of that IP right, is the startup itself, not the people who run the startup. It's very, very important to clarify, which is why also in your founders agreement, you want to highlight if there's any of the founders that already has an IP, that has been protected, and they have the certificate and all of that. It's very important to note it. If you're working on something outside of startup time, very important to make these things very clear, because once that entity is created, whatever IP is created from that day belongs to the company, non-negotiable. Right. Now another thing to quickly touch on is insurance. We don't really have a big insurance culture in Nigeria, and it's a problem, right? I understand that people say that insurance companies just want to cash out this and that, yada yada yada. But it's always important to protect yourselves from risk, to protect the business as well. You can't avoid every kind of risk, but you can limit the impact of that risk on your business, on your team, and on the founders. So you want to think through cyber attacks, you want to think through indemnities, especially for lots of developers. You wanna get an indemnity insurance. You can actually purchase some of this insurance from other countries. Speak with them and let them know where you're based and all of that, because what happens, what I see happen is, a developer works on something, and then an issue arises, and the entity is very quick to throw that person under the bus. They'll say, "Oh, is this person?" So you want to be able to protect yourself from issues like that. It's not just about writing code, shipping this one, that one. You want to protect yourself. As a business, you want to protect yourself from cyber attacks. It's getting terrible these days. People are hacking into businesses, and getting information that they're not supposed to have on them. I think I was reading something recently, something about the Ministry of Justice, I think, or so. I need to clarify that, but a UK ministry got hacked recently, and people who had gotten legal aid support, their information obviously now with the hackers, right? So there is no entity that is free from any form of cyber attack. That's why there's something called ethical hacking, where they actually bring in the hackers to actually hack and try and see if their system there is porous enough and things like that, and try and find the loopholes to plug up those loopholes. So as a business, as a startup, my dear, of course, all it takes is for someone who is bored and who has the technical know-how to hack into your business and have access to, people's information. Either it could be people's card details, because these things are sold on the dark web for what? For meager amounts. So things like that, even people's addresses, name and all of that. So yeah, get that insurance against cyber attacks. Get an indemnity insurance to protect yourself if you're a developer. And of course, public liability insurance as well. If you're a logistics startup, have you insured your bikes? Have you insured against third parties? Have you insured your riders? I think that's Vanessa. Hi, Vanessa. Please mute yourself. Oh, thank you. Right. So have you insured your drivers, the bikes, third parties, and all of that? It's very, very important, because cutting costs is very good for a business. Ensuring your business is a smart business decision to make. Very, very smart business decision, right? So, whilst I know it may not be a widespread, usual thing to find, do not follow the crowd. Be unusual, be that unusual founder, and take steps to limit your risks as much as possible. Moving on, the part that maybe a lot of you might have been waiting for, fundraising, and investor readiness.
Sorry,
So,
Karen, I have a question though. Someone's hand is up. Let's have Julie.
oh,
All right.
hi, Julius. Oh, I didn't see that. My apologies.
Julius, you can unmute yourself.
All right, thank you so much, Karen.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I just want to ask a question regarding the trademark, IP and patent and all that. So essentially, I think I learned at some point that, for you to patent a particular innovation or idea, it has to be original. So I just want to paint a scenario where an idea you're trying to, patent is something, globally speaking, or let me say from global perspective, it's not something new. So regional wise, it's something that is somewhere, but maybe where you are currently or where you plan to use is something that's foreign, right? So in that case, you have successfully developed this idea in another terrain. So can you say can you patent such idea, given that it's new in that region, or it's impossible? Maybe
Can you patent what kind of idea? Because I heard you mention global.
You said what?
Can you patent what kind of idea? I didn't hear all of your question clearly.
Okay, maybe let me paint a scenario so that you can properly understand. So what I'm saying is this: say for instance, in the Western world, there's this technology of instant payment at virtually all supermarkets. But when we
the tap payment, is that it?
Yeah, the tap payment, tap and pay. Yeah.
Okay.
So when you come to Nigeria. I mean, in Nigeria, we don't have something like that. And having seen that in the Western world and you know it works, and then you feel like you could replicate the idea again. So in this case, being the first of its kind in Nigeria, can you patent the idea in Nigeria, given the fact that it exists somewhere else?
Okay, so typically, right, when we move to patent, right, or trademark, or even copyright or anything, right, there has to be a search done. Because whilst you might think that is new in Nigeria, there might be someone who actually holds the patent over it. So it's very important for us to do a registry search first. And we're certain that, okay, there's no one who has, been able to patent this, right? And then we then move to patent it. But then again, off the top of my head, I don't know that that might be entirely new because the tap to pay has been in in existence now for what? For decades, really. So
Basically,
there
this
might
is
have been
just, I
someone
mean, this
that,
is just
for an example.
the example, yeah.
Okay,
So
so to
the
answer the
core,
question,
mm,
before you move to patent, there has to be your legal team will let you know that, okay, first step for us to do is to run a search, right? To ensure that there's no one out there that has that right over that thing. So there will be a search run.
so once the search
Well,
is
that's
done
what we
and
do
then
at
there's
KB
no,
anyways.
yeah, once the search is done and it appears no one is holding any patents,
We move
nothing,
immediately
right? Despite the
because
fact that it exists somewhere else, yeah.
yes, yes, because
Oh,
again,
oh,
so
great.
IP rights are jurisdictional in terms like regional,
Okay,
like
okay,
you register in a particular place.
great.
Notwithstanding, right, you can actually register your IP across a lot of countries, actually, also at the same time, but it's quite it's quite steep for those that want to do it. I have an example in 2023. One of our clients was actually sued by an entity, a European entity, right, that had gotten coverage, right, across WIPO member states. And so one of our clients was sued for using the same name or a similar name and domain name and all of that. And but yeah, you can actually get coverage across WIPO member states. But for your startup, yeah, just focus on the place where you actually get your business done, right? And as you grow, it then becomes a thing where you can assign the IP to any other entity that you want to assign it to, right? It could be your parent company, it could be another company that's acquired you and all of that. But just have it at the place where your business really predominantly renders its services or solves a chunk of the problem.
All right, thank you so much.
All right. I
Yeah,
think we had
I think there's
Remy's
someone
hand up.
else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Remy. I think that's Remy. Remy, you want to go? You can just unmute yourself.
Thank you, Ayola. And thank you, Karen, for the session. My question is also on the patents and patent enforcement. So I hope people on patents, everybody has seen the Flash of Genius movie and his trial that said he to be or not to be.
What movie did you just mention?
Flash of Genius,
Flash of
about
Genius.
the invention of the windshield wipers, the invention of the intermittent windshield wipers. So they are windshield wipers, but he found a new way to make the windshield wipers we have today that are able to go slow, go fast, go much faster. It was a different guy that figured out before windshields just had one speed. He found a way to create a circuit that controlled the speed of the windshield. So they stole that idea from him, and he had a court trial about it. That look, I did not invent the resistor, the transistor, the capacitor, but the path of arranging them together that made them work this way was my invention. After about 20, 40 years, he won eventually. But my point here is we have something like that. And of course, anybody else in the industry has the same raw materials. But we put them together in a way that's different. I am being told that the best we can get is to say that it's trade secret and not tell anyone. But okay, in that situation, we can we register that configuration as a patent and license it to franchises that are able to then replicate it? Of course, eventually there's going to be us having to create the hardware, but the way of connecting the network could be ours. Is there a possibility there? And then
Can we
my
address your
second,
first question, please? I'm not good with people lumping questions up. I will forget one of them. But yeah,
okay,
right. So the 20, 40 years in the movie, that's really sad. 20, please try your best to not go to court. So. But anyways, no, you can actually move to patentable. What will most likely be granted in Nigeria is something that they call in for lack of better words, a design patent, in the sense that rather than getting 20 years, you will get 10 years. And yes, what you have is a trade secret, right? It is a trade secret. And so you must protect it. But, to ensure that, or to allow you, give licenses out to franchises to utilize and things like that, yes, you can still register it and get 10 years, at least. So for you, for the next decade, you're the one that's sitting on that, right? But then again, if you look at the strategy side of things, now after 10 years, what happens is it will go into the public domain, which means people now have access to it. So what you need to do is go back to the drawing table, right, and ask yourself the hard questions, right? What are you looking to generate financially from this particular invention? What are you looking to generate financially? Will 10 years be what's the word? Will 10 years be enough for you to generate that? Or do you need a slightly longer time? Right? That's what's going to help you decide if you want to go ahead to get the 10 years protection in Nigeria, or if you want to do the trade secrets, if you want to have them as trade secrets and just protect them as trade secrets. But again, if someone goes ahead because ahead and they do register that in Nigeria, first in time to file. And we don't want you being in court like the movie. 30, 40 years, that's a long time. But yeah. So we can have a conversation about that, and I want to understand what it is, and we can talk through. But I need to understand your finances, what you're trying to get out of that, to let you know, okay, this is actually what to go for. This would give you maybe a good time to generate the amount and all of that. Yeah, yeah.
thank you very much.
Okay, now
So
the second question.
the second question, well, a bridge, uh, the 10 years does not apply.
Hi, Remy. I can't hear you. I don't know if it's just me.
I think it's the network, maybe the rain.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, maybe when Remy comes back, we will have him have the second question. You can just go ahead with your presentation.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt, but like, is it okay to just say a few things based on what you said on the IP topic, if you don't mind? My name is Ayo, and I've been a speaker here. I've enjoyed the session. On the IP issues that you mentioned, especially on the scenario you gave on Zap, the consequences are far-aching, right? On that, for example, Zap Africa, they were in the middle of a seed round. They were in the middle of raising $8 million for their seed round, and that controversy of Zap, Paystack, whatever, all the investors pulled out. Like, it was very funny that something as flimsy as that, because if you even look at it, they are both on different trademark sections, but because of something that, that they were still resolving it in court and everything, just that controversy, they lost, an $8 million seed round from investors who pulled out just because of that, right? So, as just like Karen was saying on the IP issue, it is very, very important it's probably one of the biggest things that can kill your startup, because investors hate to hear things like that. Coming from an investor perspective, when they hear IP issues, courts, and they're in the middle of giving you their money, they will pull out very, very fast. So I just wanted to add that especially if you are someone who wants to raise money, you want to scale your startup, IP issues is probably one of the first things you have to take care of at the beginning of registering the company. It's very important because in this case now, Zap Africa seemed to be the complainant, but they still lost, right? They're still the victim in this. They still lost their seed round, right?
Yeah,
So
$8
it's a
million
very,
is a lot actually
yeah,
too.
it's a very bad place to be, right? So yeah, I just wanted to add that, yeah.
Thank you for that, Ayo. Right. So moving on. So in terms of, we had spoken earlier about investors obviously wanting clarity. They don't want to deal with an entity that has issues already. And I already gave a very perfect example. I mean, Zap Africa losing their $8 million raise. That's really sad. So things to definitely avoid, don't rely on verbal agreements, have them written in black and white. You need to actually set up your virtual data room, right? Where you have, all your documents, for example, founders, in finances, legal, all of that, right? Market research, things like that. Have all your folders, not documents, have all your folders, right? Clearly highlighted and the right documents within each of them. Because when you start speaking with investors during the conversations and like due diligence phase, they're gonna want to look at your data room to actually see and say, are these guys actually serious about this business? What steps have they taken in terms of legal and business steps to ensure they have an airtight structure? Another thing to do is allow your legal team access to the data room. The reason why I say that is because whilst it's very normal to want to, you're asking for $2 million from a particular investor, you want to get it, you want to impress them, then you open everything. You some of you don't. What's that thing that Bobrisky said? Oh my, this would have been a perfect Bobrisky moment. Then you open your mouth and you tell everybody about it. Exactly, good. So yeah, you might feel the need to just give access to everything in your data room. But please remember that there's some things that should not get, to someone's eyes or purview without, executing an NDA, things like trade secrets and all of that, right? So definitely pass that through your legal team. Let them have access and look through it and tell you, okay, this information is good to be here and you can have this here. This other folder, restrict it. This other folder, restrict it, so that you know who at any point has access to this folder, date, time, whatever. Another thing to note is the investment deals. Now, you might be raising from the US, you might be raising from the UK, you might be raising from within Africa, right? And different jurisdictions, right, have different deal structures. The US is very popular for the safe, but don't go and carry safe to do, you say you're raising money for a Nigerian entity, or and let the judge not flog you out of court if anything happens. But yeah, so it's very important to, understand where your investors are coming from, right? Understand what those jurisdictions require in terms of how deals are structured. Are you raising in exchange for equity, or are you raising, through debts, right? Think through these things and tailor it accordingly. Think through valuations as well. Very, 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 very important. And like ownership structure. I mean, the Silicon Valley way of valuing is quite different, right? When you start to go into other jurisdictions, you see that things are done a little bit differently, and it's all fine. At the end of the day, it's pretty much to the business benefits. But the most important thing is understanding where your money is coming from. Follow the money and ensure that your source of funds, let's put it that way, for the business, is not impacted in one way or the other. And then investors are going to run due diligence on you. And I say to all my clients, right, it's not every money that you collect. It might look nice, it might look juicy, but it's not every money that you will collect, right? Do your own due diligence on investors as well, right? Look at the kind of startups they have funded in the past. How well have the startups done? What industry? Like you see patterns. Study the pattern. Is this particular investor putting money in a lot of health tech startups, but you're a fintech? how are they going to be of benefit to you? Because again, you're supposed to be providing an ROI within the next 5 to 7 years on their investments, right? And there's going to be a lot of pressure to achieve that. But if you are aligned with an investor who has an understanding of your industry, maybe the partners there have probably worked in the fintech space for the past 2 decades, 3 decades. They can probably do intros to other potential investors who may have an interest in your startup. They can introduce you to courses that would help the co-founders to improve their skills and better understand how to run the business, right? You find out as a business, if you align with such kind of investment VCs, right, you find that you're actually going to grow. Your business is going to grow. But if you align with a VC who probably their track record is health tech startups, and like I said, you're a fintech, they may or may not be able to help you, right? Another thing during diligence, you want to understand, how's their deal structure like? What's how much equity are they going to ask for, right? Is this something you can part with at this time? Is this something that you can negotiate? Have you seen instances of people who have negotiated and like come out on top? Can you do equity and debt? Can you combine that with this VC firm and all of that? And also with angel investors as well. A lot of angel investors just drop their money and keep it going. They don't even want stress, right? But the truth is, there's some angel investors that you're going to collect money from, and they would act like that big brother, big sister that you probably always wanted to have in business, in the sense that they will probably even be the ones saying, I came across this thing, I think you guys will actually get into this accelerator, how about you try it out, and I'm gonna maybe do intros to someone that can help with this application and things like that. So always do your own due diligence. Again, it's not every money that is thrown at your face that you must collect. Please.
All right,
Thank you.
let me jump in there. Let me jump in
Yeah.
there. I know that founders often sign SAFE, term sheets, MOU without fully understanding the legal implications. What are your 3 courses every founder should scrutinize before signing any early stage deal?
How much are you giving? How much equity are you looking to collect from me? um, what else to look out for, really? Valuation as well. The clause on valuation is very key, because you could easily undervalue your company by just accepting a certain amount of money using a particular valuation. So that's something to look out for. Very, very important. I mean, term sheets are pretty much, they are good as a legal document to make reference to and then go back to the agreement, right? Because they set out what you would have discussed and what you're going to put in your contract, right? So yeah, definitely look at that. Another thing to look out for as well, we did have this client that a particular entity was trying to put money in them, to the tune of 1.5 million USD, and they were asking for, I think, 3 board seats. How about you collect the entire company? Collect it, carry it and run. If you don't collect it and you go with it, I'll fight you. So you also want to understand the level of control within the business. And again, I'm saying this because you might just say to yourself as a founder, I just bought seats, right? But the board, right, makes decisions for the company. The CEO is the captain, but the board makes decisions. So when you have a particular investor, taking most of your board seats, it's very evident what's going to happen in the next couple of months. They're going to steer that ship in a different direction that favors them. Sometimes it could also be to ensure that they already have, because these are some things that happen. The dirty, what we're going to call it now, the dirty side of investments, trying to prevent a startup from growing so big to come and compete with an existing business that they already have huge stakes in, right? So please be very careful with this whole board seat thing. Like, Please, please, please don't go and give somebody three board seats because of 1.5 million. But anyways, yeah, look at valuation, equity, the amount of money that they're putting in as well. With a safe, you can't really say for certain how much equity that you will be giving out at that point in time. But with the valuation, right? The valuation is very key for you to know, so that again, because if you undervalue your company from the onset, it's going to make it difficult for future financing as well. You may start to look like a walking red flag to future investors, depending on the company valuation and all of that. But then again, these things can still always be reversed at a later date. But it's always important to get things right from the get-go.
All right, I think we have HP's hands up. I don't know what that is.
Hewlett Packard, hi.
Hi, Karen. Hi, Ayola.
Right.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the session. So, Karen, I want to ask a question about NDAs and investors. So, not recently, but some time back, Vusit Makwayo said something about not signing NDAs when he's talking to founders, and it really blew up. People had lots of opinions about it. It was trending on LinkedIn, and I also saw a tweet from an investor, I think Eunice Ajimias on X, where she talked about the fact that most investors don't like to sign NDAs. So I'm asking from the founder's perspective, knowing fully well that startups are founders need to really protect their ideas and everything. What's the way forward when meeting an investor and knowing that, I mean, people have this take that investors, they don't want to sign NDAs because after all, your idea, every other person might have the idea. The most important thing is the execution. So if a founder is meeting an investor like that, what's the way forward to balance it out?
Well, do your due diligence. There was something that came out on Twitter some years back that someone had pitched a business, a legal tech business, and then someone who was on the panel had taken it and run with it, right? I don't know if that issue ever made it to court or if it was settled out of court, but I know it did come up some years back on Twitter. So please do your due diligence on investors. When you do your due diligence, you would find out the ones that have something going on within them. Maybe they've probably taken someone within the VC has taken an idea and has run with it and things like that. You would know, right? Again, when you conduct your due diligence and you see that, okay, these people are highly trustworthy, it can sort of like make you feel confident, in a way, right? But another thing to do as well is have a trail. Like I said, we'll have an email trail as well of some of these conversations, right? Let it be very clear that, okay, on this day you shared this and all of that, and then you're jumping on this call to pitch and what have you. Because should anything happen, should any issue arise, you can refer to, oh, well, I was the one that shared this on this day. So how are you saying that you had this on so and so date and things like that? So yeah, do your due diligence, see what their track record is like, right? And verbal conversations, please keep that out of the way. Have your email conversations. Let's keep things professional. Should we need to, refer to it at a later date for whatever reason?
All right. So Karen, I see situations around founders getting overly excited, right? Especially when you're speaking to investors. You want to tell them all your future dreams, how you see it come out, how you're planning to this and that. And in doing that, sometimes we release certain trade secrets or certain business secrets. What's your advice? How do we curb the excitement? I speak from a space of passion, right? Especially when you're speaking to investors. You're saying, oh, you're passionate about how you're expressing yourself, and in expressing yourself, you just find out that, oh, I shouldn't have said that, but it's out already, right? So how do you protect yourself? How do you advise us to go about this?
Well, you can't fight passion. Um, but I think it's important the slides help, the prompts on the slides and just sticking to that, right? But I think where you then start getting into things is when you're being asked questions, and that then becomes very tricky. So try to answer only what's necessary.
Yeah,
Because there's
that's
something
true.
that we tell our clients. For example, let's say we're in a trial, right, and someone was being cross-examined, right? When we're prepping our clients, for a cross-examination and things like that, we say to them, answer only what was asked. Don't go and tell us about your village or the road to your village. Answer only what was asked, right? It helps, right? Because if you notice, like in trials, and when you've asked a question and then the person keeps going and is sharing this and sharing that, I promise you a good lawyer will be able to nail that person immediately. So the same thing applies as well in pitching. Whilst the passion is there, the truth is passion cannot be, it can't be missed. It's going to be in how your eyes light up. It's going to be in the body language. It's going to be in your track record so far. So in answering the questions, just answer what was asked and leave it at that. They're going to take time and deliberate, and if they need any clarity, for whatever reason, then they would ask you, right? And you can provide that clarity, probably via email as well.
All right, thank you, Karen. I see Julius' hands up. Julius, you have the mic.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is a very practical question you asked, your daily the other time, because I had a first-hand experience about some of these business scouts, who come to, look for promising setup, and then they want to get to know have one or two information about them. Yeah. So and I think from the perspective of a founder, this might actually not be as simple as probably the way it's been taken. But then from the perspective of Karen and what she said, I think it's very important that we really pay attention to some certain questions when we are being asked, of course, some questions are kind of eliciting. So they want to know what goes on. If you're not very careful, you might be giving some information that may really say your idea out, and at the end of the day, you stand at a disadvantage. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for this.
All right, let's
This
balance
thing
the
that you said,
conversation. Karen, let's
yeah, this
balance the
thing,
conversation, right?
let's do what?
Let's balance the conversation. I want
No,
an,
I wanted to
want
add
an
something to what
investor to,
Julius said. I
just
wanted
before
to add
you add,
something to
just
what
before you
Julius
add,
said.
right? Just before you add,
Yeah.
Karen, you want an investor to invest in your ideas,
Mm-hmm.
but you also don't want to give out the idea. Just balance it for me.
No, it's not about. So I wanted to say something because Julius just reminded me. A client of mine had a conversation some months back, right? We're going to have a conversation with a potential investor in the US, right? And he reached out to me, and I was like, do you know what? I'm going to join the call. I'm going to prompt you. What you should answer, I will prompt you to answer. The extent to which you should answer, I will also prompt you. So be on the lookout. Like he has two devices, luckily for him. So he was using one and his laptop, and then he had the other one where I was prompting him through, right? So if it helps, right, you can have your lawyer on the call, right? It's not a problem for your lawyer to be on the call. I mean, it depends on how you have modeled your team. Your lawyer on the call could be a member of your team, a member of your day to day, right? Just do intros, my colleagues, this and that, yada yada yada. But what they don't know is your lawyer is prompting you on what to say and what not to say. Don't go and jabber too much. But then the thing you said, Ayola, about sharing ideas and all of that. Yes, yes, share ideas, right? Share what, well, not necessarily ideas. Share what the business has done so far. You're supposed to be speaking through, oh, this is what we've done so far, this is the traction we've gotten so far, this is how much we're going to get within the next couple of months, yeah, and all of that, right? But if it helps, maybe you can try to have your legal team, a member of your legal team on the call, and maybe like the first one or two times where it happens, where they prompt you, over time you start to know, you then start to be a lot more in quote diplomatic with the responses, and still be able to exude that you're passionate about the business, and that you're open to sharing more information with them as well. That was a very funny call, by the way, because that day I was at the gym. Full disclosure, it was I was at the gym that day. and I was trying to lift, and then he said something like, what's this one doing now? But yeah, it always helps to have like a chaperone, if you would call it that way. Right. So diligence of prospective investors, their legal and investment history matters. Protect your interests as you seek funding. Not all investment is suitable for your startup. So it's important to have that at the back of your mind. And
Karen,
just
before you
before,
move away from that slide, what are the legal red flags
yeah,
immediately that concerns you in a startup data room?
the stop data room.
Yeah,
The
in a
red
startup,
flags.
yes.
I mean, I've not seen your registration, your incorporation documents. I'm not seeing the founders agreement. I'm not seeing if you do have like a team. I'm not seeing the folder for employees. I'm not seeing your IP protection folder in terms of IP rights. You know, the steps you've taken to protect either copyright or do a trademark, or maybe your patent is underway and things like that. Cap table as well. That's something that investors are looking out for as well. They want to see if you're going to share the startup cake, like palliative, you have distributed it. So why are you then calling them to come and enter after you gave 75% to your daddy? Like, what do you then want them to come and share 2%? So these are things to look out for, and that I would look out for as well. What else? What else? What else? What else? Yeah, finances. And I like to look out for market research, but that's just the business side of my brain that comes up when I do that, you know, because it shows investors that, oh, you've actually done the work. You're not just moving on vibes and chill and inshallah, you've actually, done your research and you have this information as well. So yeah, those are things to definitely have as folders anyways. And then within those folders, you can have subfolders and the documents within them.
All right, great. We have Ahmad hands up. Let's have you, Ahmad.
Right. Good morning, Karen.
Hi,
Thank you
morning. Oh,
for
still
the
morning.
thank you for the insights. It's so nice, and I really appreciate it. So I've learned a lot because I myself I'm a software developer, and I've not been to the space of administrative management and legal part of the business. So I've learned a lot from this session, and I want to ask a question that you haven't talked about, which is about you said something about putting a lawyer, like integrating a lawyer into your team, right? And you also talked about
I
all the
said that in
legal
the
implications.
context of uh
Against the investors.
teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
So if I have a lawyer now, because this is Nigeria and not everybody is. There are some people that just want to come and they at first they may be trustworthy at first, but the time business grows, they may want to like become greedy and all that. How can I protect myself from such things?
How can you protect
In
yourself from
terms of the
lawyer?
in terms of
Yeah,
the
like
lawyer.
business, like business. Yes. Like okay, the
Okay.
lawyer is doing the job, but I still want like a layer of protection.
Look, if you have issues with your lawyer, you should not be using that person. I'll just tell you for free. If you can't trust your lawyer or your legal team, then don't use them. Because
Okay.
essentially, these are the people that you tell the rawest of secrets, things that you may not be able to even confide in your family members. So when it gets to that point, then there's no point. Just let that professional relationship come to an end, and then maybe find someone else that you can trust. Because your lawyer literally is the person like that, you know, holds your will. Should anything happen to you, they're the ones that hold
Yeah,
your will,
yeah,
that can actually, so
yeah.
if that trust is not there, leave it. That relationship has come to its final days. Go somewhere else,
Okay.
because it's just like having your doctor as well. I'm supposed to trust my doctor, and I do trust, my doctors, because once that trust is not there anymore, then and I would definitely say don't turn a blind eye to your intuition, if that makes sense. There has to be a reason
Okay.
why that is there. So you can have the conversation with your lawyer and tell them, look, this is how I'm feeling. This is this and that. I'm feeling a certain kind of way. Have that conversation, be very clear about it. If after that, you're unable to shake that off because maybe some things haven't been made clear and all of that, then please just, you can come to an end with that relationship.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. I know Remy is back on this call, but Remy, I know you had your second question and network kicked you out. Maybe you just want to ask before Karen goes deeper into our slides. Remy.
Thank you very much, Ariola. The Wi-Fi just went off. So you said that, yes, it's a trade secret, and at best we could get a custom patent that lasts 10 years. So, but if it was a entirely new product that does not exist, new hardware, it's a new product like a new iPhone, what's the tenure on that patent?
Oh,
And
patents are for 20 years. Then after that,
20,
they go into the public domain. You hold that right. So for the next 20 years, people would have to come to you to ask your permission to be able to either replicate or use the steps you have used to arrive at a different thing and all of that, right? Which is why you have to give them a license, license to use, license, yeah. So 20 years.
and if someone wants to offer a license, what exactly should they be focused on? Like as a patent holder, when you want to offer licenses, what should you be looking at as to help you benefit as well as be fair to the licensee?
How you
That,
benefit really is just how much is going to be paid for the license, right? But what you'll be focused on is the duration, right? How long do they have this license for, right? If they're going to use replicate the same steps, or they're going to be doing something entirely different, piggybacking off your own innovation. In that case, then you want to start talking about how the profits will be split, when they do make profits from that. So yeah, duration, how profit is shared if they build on your own, or they find a channel through what you have built to do something else, and then they're generating money and things like that. And of course, you could decide to charge a license fee that's outright, or you could decide to tie it to their own profit margins as well. Again, this is the business side of things, where you have to review and see which one works, an outright fee or profit margin fee model.
all right. Thank you very much. Um, there was another
Next
question
question.
about. I'll let anybody else. And thank you very much. Thank you, Karen.
Okay.
Ebenezer says he can't find where to raise his hand, but his hand is up, Sha. So Ebenezer, let's have you.
Okay. So good morning again, Karen. Thank you very much for this section. I've learned so much really. A lot of terminologies I've never had before, but so it's nice to be here again. Also, as a first-time founder, yeah, I have to admit to you, a lot of these things are very much overwhelming in a way, say for someone like myself. So I do both technical and even the business aspect of things. I'm also involved. So having to shoulder these legal things are can be a little bit overwhelming for someone like myself. So the question now is that so I'm also big on getting the expert on board instead of just trying to Google stuff and all of that, because I know now that at some point in my journey I've tried to do certain things that I'm not supposed to do instead of just getting the expert. And to be honest, it has not really been it has not really worked out. So I like getting the expert on board for things. Also, one thing I don't mind doing is outsourcing, but with this conversation, I feel like a legal person should, even at to the beginning point of things, to a very long time in the journey of things, basically. So how visible it is to have someone on board. Bearing in mind that this is, say, a fresh startup, is not so the funds are not so, there as much. So how visible is it to like have someone on board with you, and what are like the things that are involved? Is it can it be, say, you partner with, say, maybe an agency and all of this whatnot? Could you just walk me through what it would be like trying to get someone on board as for legal things and all of that? Thank you.
Well, yes, you can get someone, an in-house person on board, but then you have to consider their experience level and yeah, experience level working with startups of your manner. Alternatively, you can also approach like a law firm that works with startups and you can have a conversation with them, about your business, about where the business is financially, what your needs are, and they should be able to work something out for you. Either ways, the most important thing is having, a lawyer or a law firm that you work with, right? Because these guys pretty much forecast, and I understand that this can be, overwhelming information, right? But that's why you need to have like your legal team, like, or a law firm that you work with. They pretty much think through these things for you and they make it easy for you to navigate. Essentially what they might, at the end of the day, what they might probably just need from you would be, oh yeah, we need you to sign this document, or oh, let's get on the call to explain this agreement to you and things like that. So to a large extent, they make it easier for you. So yeah, if you do need support though, you can always reach out to me and we can have a conversation about it.
Okay, thank you very much, Karen. That clarifies my question. Thank you very much.
All right,
You're
Karen,
welcome.
Karen, just to jump in again, what's your advice on using online templates like Y Combinator, Docs, or Docracy, versus hiring a legal advisor from day one?
Templates, templates are templates. Templates can put you in trouble real quick because, okay, so when templates are designed, right, what goes into it is the question we ask ourselves is, okay, what are the clauses that we need to have in this particular document, right? What are the key clauses? And then we put them there. But then templates do not consider the context of each situation, each scenario, right? And that's where the problem lies. In terms of them coming with the, key clauses, right, or terms, guaranteed you're going to have that. If you're going to work with like a YC template, you will have that, but the context now becomes a problem, right? So totally up to you as a founder, totally up to you, but definitely be mindful of templates.
Yeah, but are there situations where, a lawyer who is not a startup lawyer, because I want to believe that being a startup lawyer is, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Karen?
I lost you first. Yeah, I can hear
All
you
right.
now.
So I wanted to say that, are there situations where a lawyer who is not a startup lawyer, I want to believe that startup lawyer is a specialty or a specialization, right? Are there situations where, a founder who is not also aware of the name startup lawyer goes to be the lawyer, and this lawyer uses template, but the founder doesn't know?
It's very possible, very possible. I dealt with that. Oh my goodness, I dealt with that um recently actually for a particular deal. But in this situation, right, it was very glaring. It was actually very glaring that it was a template. And I also had to call the client and say, "Do you know what, can you speak now? This is why I think this person that has put this thing together is just completely lazy, because what is this? Like, there are just so many issues with it, right? Um, so yes, sometimes it can be visible, right? But then again, it's best to work with people that understand what it is that they're doing. That's one, right? And also have an experience level and can foresee certain things. Because, the thing about protecting against risk is, you understand that, okay, this is obtainable, and you might have also experienced it elsewhere and seen that, oh, this actually does happen and this is what will come out of it. So there are lawyers for like different things. There are lawyers that, for example, there are lawyers that they're litigation lawyers, all they know is they go to court, right? Court. Now, if you were to approach such a person to help you out with a deal, to structure a deal agreement, they may not be able to do that. Reason being because they don't have that experience. It doesn't mean they're not good lawyers. They are, because they're good at litigation, right? But not necessarily with dealing with, like startups and all of that, right? I hope that you understand what I'm sharing.
Yeah.
So it's important to work with people who are experienced in certain things. It's just like, okay, let's say I'm married now and I want to get a divorce. I'm gonna go to a divorce lawyer specifically for that purpose. I'm not gonna go to an IP lawyer for that. What do you want to do? Trademark my divorce? Like, I'm definitely gonna go to a divorce lawyer specifically because they have an understanding of what happens, in terms of what I should be negotiating for. They have that understanding, in terms of the period and the complexities and all of that. Oh, who keeps the kids and who gets this and who keeps the dog and all of that. They understand that, right? So work with people who have an understanding of what it is that you are building. It's very, very important because they will foresee a lot of these things for you rather than, well, allow you experience the problems and then have to spend a whole lot of money trying to fix the problem.
All right. So in your experience, right, Karen, how enforceable are investment protections across Africa?
Investment protections.
Yes.
Anything is enforceable. Anything is enforceable.
Okay, so what recourse do investors really have when things go wrong?
Look, we have a very classic example of the Emirates issue, right? So there's that. Now, depending on where, so again, they're going to invest in an entity, and it depends on the jurisdiction of the entity. So if the entity is based outside of Africa, they can sue the entity in whatever jurisdiction where it's based in, right? That's something to note. Again, I feel like a lot of people say things like they can get away with some of these things. A lot of founders say they can get away with some of these things. But unless you want to live and die in your particular country, you're not going to get away with it because they can also be escalated as well in terms of enforcement. Yes, you can be sued, and of course, judgment can always be enforced in another jurisdiction. I hope that you're aware of it. I could get like court judgment here in the UK and go enforce in Nigeria. So, things like that. So yes, like I said, anything can be enforced. It just depends on the extent to which the aggrieved party is looking to follow it through, really.
Great. Thanks, Karen.
I thought okay, so yeah, I feel like we have touched on this, the legal mistakes to avoid all through this conversation. We have touched on it. So obviously, don't go and we don't have founders agreement or founders agreement. What's that? Please don't go and do equity without vesting. We're not sharing cake. Please have, contracts with, your employees, contractors, partners, etc. IP, very, very important. I think case in point, Ayo gave us, was it Ayo Dele or so that gave us an example, the example of
Zap
Zap
Africa.
Africa and Paystack Zap. Then labor laws as well. You don't want to run a business that obviously is not complying with existing labor laws. And one thing to note as well, especially with foreign investors, they want to see that you comply with labor regulations. They really want to see that. It's very, very key. So please do avoid these common pitfalls. They're very common, so common that sometimes people actually ignore them. But I'll tell you something for free. If you set up a startup, right, and the first thing on your mind is let's have a founders agreement executed, between us co-founders, then please know that I'm already giving you a salute. That's you already taking the first step to ensuring that your foundation is solid. And once you start that way, you're definitely going to figure out every other thing, as you go along the line, which is great. But first things first, let's start right. Right. So okay, good. So this is just a checklist. Founders agreement, your legal structure, key contracts in place, IP protected, very key. I know I had mentioned that a company is a legal person on its own, right? But just to let you know that because it's a legal person doesn't mean that the directors of the company cannot be sued. Of course, they can be sued if something goes wrong, and the court is mandated to take off their corporate veil to peek in and see who has caused this, why did it happen, and things like that. So just have that at the back of your mind. Because a company is a legal person does not mean that you, the founder, problem will not touch you if you do something that's wrong. Yeah. So if you have any questions,
Aaron, before you
yes,
wrap it
I
up,
am a dog lover. Do drag me, it's your business. But yeah,
so before you wrap it up, right?
yeah,
I have a question for you.
yes, please shoot.
So how should co-founders structure their legal relationship to avoid future conflicts? Is a simple equity enough, split enough for the agreement to or the relationship to last?
A simple what
A simple equity split.
co-founders.
Yes.
Okay, so when it comes to equity conversations and co-founders, oh, things happen, right? But I think YC has this model that I think maybe at least 10% or 15% should go to the CTO and things like that. But I say to people, just have a conversation, right? What are we all bringing to the table, right? I don't mind people splitting maybe 40, 30, 30, 35, 40, this and all of that. It's the most important thing is, yeah, a simple equity split is fine, really. But consider again who was the one that came up with the idea and said, okay, I want to bring these people on board. That person may feel like they want to get, a significantly higher amount of equity than the others, right? And rightfully so. It then becomes a thing. I mean, imagine if Ayola sets up a startup, he's the one that came up with the idea, and then he was like, oh, Karen, I want to start this thing. Come, let's do it together. And then Ayo says, okay, he wants to go with 40%. And then there's someone else that we're bringing on board, and he wants us to split maybe 60% within each other, or three other people to split 60% within each other. Don't you think it would be silly of me to want to collect 40%? Am I the one that called Ayo? Ayo called me, right? So again, like, it's a difficult conversation, but it needs to be had. It definitely needs to be had. It's equity, I will say this, 100% of zero is always going to be zero. So let's not, like, I don't like a situation where people then start to overflog the whole thing. No, I want 75%. No. Have a conversation, talk through commitment levels, and just make it as simple as much as possible. It's by the vesting period that you will then know who is for me and who is against me, because some people might not make it till the end of the vesting period. Some of the co-founders may not make it till that end, right? But at least have the conversation. Sometimes you can also you can have a conversation with your lawyer as well. The group of guys, young chaps that actually reached out, and they're like, oh, they've been having this issue with equity, and they were trying to sort it out. And we had to jump on a call to have that conversation and get them to actually ask themselves individually the hard question. On another end, another client reached out and said her co-founder went behind her back. One of the co-founders who left, the other co-founder went behind her back, and bought over the equity from the person just so you could have a significantly higher amount. So these are some of the things that happen, and the truth is, they should not necessarily happen if you have the conversation and think through what each person is bringing to the team, commitment levels, how long they're committed to this and all of that, and of course, the vesting period for the equity.
All right, Lawrence, you can go now.
Good morning, Karen. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Yes, based on what you just said, what if everything has been documented and all of that, but in actual reality, this other person is not bringing to the table what he or she is expected to bring. So if you have a case where you have this equity shares 50-50 and all of that, and the actual bringing to the table, you find out that one person is bringing far more than the other person, even when several conversations have been had and lots of things. So, what do you advise in cases like this?
If you feel like someone is bringing more to the table, then it means that the other person is not doing what they're supposed to be doing in terms of roles and responsibilities. Am I correct?
Yeah, exactly.
The founders agreement provides room for that and what should be done in that situation. Because that's pretty much the person not doing what they're supposed to be doing in accordance to the marriage certificate between the co-founders. Case in point, the founders agreement. So
Yeah, so the reason why I'm saying that, yeah, I get you, but it might lead to some form of animosity and all of that because for someone like me, I've worked with lots of people and I've come to discover that we all have our different energies, and some people feel when you're trying to get them to bring in as much to the table, they start feeling like, oh, you're giving them tough times and all of that, and it begins to lead to a lot of issues, even when it's obvious that they are not bringing to the table. But it makes it look like, oh no, you're trying to parent them, you're trying to push them, and people have limits. So,
I
but
mean, you make reference to the founders agreement. This is what you're supposed to do per this agreement that we signed on so and so day, right? These are the milestones. This is what happens if you're not acting in accordance with this agreement, which is why it was already signed in the first place, right? So yes, it will lead to someone will definitely feel slighted, and it's fine, it's business. It is business. It's uncomfortable, but it is business, especially when it has been set out clearly, this is what's expected of you, right? We're not running the business to, have touchy feelings here and there. We're running the business to solve a problem for people, right? And part of being a business owner, right, is being able to be held accountable. If your co-founders cannot hold you accountable, then what are you doing on the team? Nobody is above accountability, not even the CEO himself. Each and every one of us must be held accountable, and if being held accountable or responsible for something means that, you're being parented, then I don't think that the person is ready to actually run a business, because it is a business, not a family. It's, you must be held accountable. Even family members hold each other accountable. So if there's an accountability problem there, then you can't you can't solve the problem. It's a personal thing for the person. They need to be the ones to work on it. This is where you might suggest, or you may suggest, some leadership courses to the person, especially those that speak on accountability, being held accountable by your business partners, by your customers, and things like that, just so that they understand what is required of them from the moment they actually set on to actually run a business. Hi, Lawrence. Are you still
All right,
there?
thanks.
yeah, thank you very much. Got that.
Thanks, Karen. I was going to ask you a question, Karen. Can you share any story where a legal preparation saved a startup from collapse, or a legal neglect led to its collapse?
Hmm. Hmm. I wouldn't really call it a collapse, but well, they're almost there. I'll give an example. Sometime in 2022, some people reached out to us, and the issue they were having actually was around IP. the CEO had signed something with the previous employer and it was coming back to bite the business and the bum. And they had not, at the time as well, I can't even recall that they had a founders agreement between themselves. They didn't have a founders agreement as well. So whilst we were trying to resolve the IP issue, because the CEO's previous employer was saying, that
Hello?
you you agreed to this, right? Which means now my company owns, the IP of this your new startup, right? So we're trying to resolve that, and we did our checks. They were just running it on vibes. And so, of course, a lawyer is always going to tell you, look, we need to do this, you need to look out for this, but we're not going to force it down your throat. We tell you, we advise you, and we say this is the best decision to go with. Let's do it. But as the business owner, it's you that says to us, okay, cool, let's do it. Or well, we can't do it at this time. There are other things and things like that. And the CEO just always had one amazing what's it called now? Excuse or the other as to why we should not follow up on something or get something sorted out. He was just always, he's like, oh, we have to build, we have to push, we have to push. Today, 2025, and as at today, anyways, for the past year now, he has been having an issue with the co-founder who pulled out. Because there were already underlying issues that were not dealt with, and it appeared to the co-founder like the
Hello?
CEO didn't want to deal with these issues, right? That's one. I think earlier on the call I spoke about a business where they had not gotten some of their things right from the get-go, and then misappropriation of funds comes in. After that, what happens? Issues arise. By the time you're auditing your accounts, your directors are then asking you, where did this money go to, and this and that and all of that. And then what happens? CEO is going to be let go and someone else will assume the seat and things like that. So they're quite a number of sad situations, right, that I've experienced in my short time on earth when it comes to startups. And I need to also be very careful in telling these stories as well so that I don't divulge confidential information. I don't know if you can tell, but I hope I've been able to share at least a little story.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks, Karen. How do we design legal systems that supports scale as startups?
Legal systems that support scale.
Not just survivals, right? Because I hear a lot of these things as for you to survive, right? This is what you should do. But how do we design legal structures that allow us scale as startups?
Your legal structure, how do you design it? First of all, it starts from the most basic thing, registering, right? But the legal structure doesn't necessarily, it prepares you. Your business structure helps you scale. Your legal structure keeps you protected. So it prepares you for come what may, you're ready, right? It's all from the foundation, really, and being able to forecast. And this is what your legal team does for you. They forecast things and they tell you this could happen, so we're going to do this, right? It has to do a whole lot with forecasting, but thinking through how to design it, it's based on the business needs, really. And these days also based on their financial appetite or capabilities as well.
Thank you, Karen. And anyone has questions for Karen? I see some very important people on this call. Mr. Shola, Oshinoiki, is a angel investors, VC, everything, investments. I don't know, Mr. Shola, do you want to say one or two things on this call? From an investor perspective, we've been having the founder's perspective. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Can you hear me okay? Or is there background noise? No. Can you hear me okay? Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
I guess
I wanted you to speak.
yeah. So I was saying that I guess from an investor's point of view, everything that Carol has said actually works both ways. It works for the founder as well as it works for the investor. I think the difference might be that from the investor's point of view, the investor is trusting the founder to deliver on his promise. And so sometimes investors actually require a little bit more protection in cases where a founder doesn't deliver on the promise. Because I invest 100 grand in you decide that you want to pivot and you're not going to deliver anymore. My money is lost. No matter how much protection I have, if the business has disappeared, it's like what Karen said, 0% of zero is zero. So sometimes investors probably need to have a little bit more protection, a little bit more due diligence to make sure that the founders they're investing in are going to follow through on what they said, and ultimately legal protection. And maybe Karen can speak to it. What kind of legal protection would you be offering to investors as opposed to founders? Maybe I throw that back to Karen. She's the lady.
Karen, over to you. The truly
Yeah,
question.
please, can you repeat the question?
What kind of legal backends will you give investors?
Oh, well, with investors, it's pretty straightforward. Everybody wants, a return on investments, right? And investing in a startup is already risky. So the support that we provide really is around due diligence, right? We want to actually understand the business, right? And then the founders. So there are two ends of things: the DD on the business to see that they actually have, the right legal documents, the right agreement signed, they've done the needful, they're paying their tax. And then on the founders to actually know if you put money in their business, they'll can use it to buy what are they calling it? Mercedes Benz. You want to know, no, like let's have a very, I mean, you just want to be certain, right, that they have a good track record. They have the experience, right? But their head is really in the game, not the ones who will not be able to account for funds, in the next 9 months or 12 months or whatever. So we do the DD on two different entities. Yeah. The company itself and the founders who are backing the company. So yeah, that's how we protect our investors because these are crazy times. Because I'm sure we see the stories of misappropriation of funds, both the ones that make it out publicly and the ones that don't. But
All right. So let's go back to that due diligence conversation. How should investors approach due diligence when investing in multiple African jurisdictions? Is there like an harmonized framework, or must it be done like country by country?
there is no harmonized framework because again, laws are jurisdictional, right? What is obtainable in Nigeria is different from what's obtainable in Kenya, right? And so what I'll be looking out for in term when I'm looking at a Nigerian business, for example, the kind of bodies, regulatory bodies I'll be approaching will be different from that, in a different entity. I'll give an example. Even with the South African acquisition that we just concluded, due diligence was a lot. It was very, very different than what's obtainable in Nigeria. So yes, it's done on a country by country basis. You want to understand what their regulations are within the country, right? And then you want you're requesting for everything. If you could even request for their birth certificate, you would. But yeah, and you're doing these checks as well because again, document verification also varies as well for different countries, like how things are done. right? In terms of verifying a document. I think there's some entities now that help with verifications, but even at that, it's not a you still need some groundwork done. So yes, you must do it on a country by country basis. Be very, very meticulous. And it has to be tailored, to that particular entity, that particular industry, for you to actually get the benefit out of it.
Thanks, Karen. I don't know if you have any more questions from the room. Anyone can just raise their hands up or mute if you can't find the hands up button.
At this point,
No questions. All right, we've drilled you, but you said you are a dog lover, so we can drill you as much as we want.
no, please don't. Can you not see me?
All right. So yes. Thanks for the session, Karen. You've done great work. A lot of people have asked how to reach you. Can you just tell us more about the service that you offer for startups? Is there like a flat rate for startups who want to work with you? How can they approach you? I know we've done a session together. You also do something similar with founders, where you also speak to them around their readiness, and legal is very key to your investment readiness process. So I don't know, I'll just let you speak for a few minutes around what you do at Katwig and Dale.
An email. Either ways, you'll be able to get it from either LinkedIn or Twitter, my email. So at Katwig and Dale, we work with startups, entrepreneurs, and investors who are passionate about Africa, right? We do provide a range of services to startups, from corporate governance and company sectorial services to information technology support to intellectual property, alternative dispute resolution, investment support. And I had to say this off the top of my mind. But yeah, the service that we render to startups, right, are tailored to the industry and the business itself, right? And I say this because different industries require different approaches in terms of how to ensure that they are being compliant. And regulatory compliance is a very, very big part of running a startup, especially when you're doing it in any jurisdiction, anyways, any jurisdiction. Let's not say some things, but yeah. So we treat startups based on their industry, their age, and what they're looking to achieve. Right? Not every startup has been set up to seek external funds, right? And that's something that we always have to have at the back of our minds. Some people want to grow organically, some people want to bootstrap and hit the ground running from day one. So again, it all depends, because how you need the kind of legal support you would need if you're seeking external funding is quite different from what you need if you're looking to grow organically, right? So yes, every day I show up at KD, and we support those who are passionate about Africa. You have to be passionate about Africa for you to be able to engage our services at Katwig and Dale. Very, very key. So if that's you, if you're either building in diaspora for Africa or you're looking to invest in Africa in general, then of course we are the law firm for you, and you can definitely feel happy and confident to reach out to us, and we can always set up a discovery call.
All right, just to also add that Katwig and Dale are partners at Umbrella. So you can also reach out to them through your dashboard on Umbrella. She's rightly our partners. All right, so next week, we'll be having the session next week. It's called the Specials, Umbrella Saturday Specials. It's going to happen on Friday. The time will be communicated. It's going to be something very, very different. Katwig, Karen spoke about insurance, and we're thinking in that direction as well. you spoke about insurance and it caught my attention. And the special is around insurance, startup insurance. It's not something you hear every day. We a lot of the conversations around fundraising, investment readiness, due diligence, legal compliance. Insurance is also very, very essential. And I'm happy that Karen, she saw my mind and brought it up. So next week will be a very great session. And we will be having someone that I also hold respectful. And then the following week would be also another session. Someone who is coming from the VC space to also speak around fundraising and the rest of it. So it's a packed session. I know Mr. Shola is coming up in July, so you should all look out for him. His session will be very, very engaging. So to everyone who joined the call, we appreciate you for being here, for taking our time. This is the first session we finished before 1 p.m. But Karen, I want to say that,
Really?
yes, this is the first we finished before 1. It's
You
usually
know, I didn't know it was supposed to stay
no,
up
no, no,
till
no, no.
1.
It's great. It's not like we want it to last 1 p.m. We were even looking for how to cut down the time, right? Because we start at 10 and then it gets all the way to 1 p.m. But some of the founders who are repeated founders on this call understand how, great it is. One last question for you, Karen, before you go. Data protection. I like the slides and the rest of the things that you spoke about, but data protection is becoming a very, very key conversation. And sometimes last week, we had someone from OPE, Dr. Adekunle, who was taking us through around securing the vaults, right? And a couple of things came around legal, just don't do this, don't do that, a lot of legal conversations. Just speak to us in a few words from the Atoshi's brain points.
Okay, so when it comes to data protection, right, it's a very big deal in Nigeria. The NDPB, the Nigerian Data Protection Bureau, presides over this, right? And of course, we know there's the Act. Data subjects are viewed as having a whole lot of power, which is why, as a startup, if you're a tech-enabled startup, you need to have your privacy policy that your end users can have a look through to understand how their information is being collected, stored, saved, destroyed, etc. Right? And because we're in the age where data is a gold mine, like entities are selling data to third parties. And this is something that the NDPB is trying to prevent in terms of being able to protect Nigerian data subjects. So yes, when it comes to data, you need to be, once you collect information as little as name, phone number. You don't even have to be collecting BVN or name, phone number. You need to get your NDPB license, right? To show that you are compliant. It's pretty much a compliance check mark that you can put on your website so that when your users go there, they can say, oh, these guys are compliant, right? And of course, regularly you would make reports to the bureau to say, okay, this is what you have done to ensure that you're being compliant. But something that some startups fail to take note of is we had spoken about integrations earlier. Good. We had spoken about integrations earlier. And in that conversation, I recall mentioning that you have access now. There's some form of shared access. So with data protection conversations now, we're now seeing that it's not so much about just integrating, it's also about understanding what your potential partners are doing in terms of data, right? How they're protecting their own end users' data, because the effect of not doing that is spilling over. So let's say I integrate with Umbrella. Okay, let's not use Umbrella. Let's use the name. Let's say I integrate with Novell, right? Novell is this startup, and Novell is already flouting data protection regulations, right, in Nigeria. automatically we're also going to get issues as well, right? Because we're working with people who are already flouting it, which means that there's some porosity on their system, which we would also suffer from, or our end users will suffer from. But what we do at Katwig and Dale really is to model your privacy policy in line with the GDPR, right? Because we find it to be all encompassing. I'm not saying that of Nigeria is not to where you can't say that. I didn't say that. But like we just find it to be all encompassing, especially in times now where, you have a startup running in Nigeria, but they probably have end users in Kenya, or they probably have end users somewhere in Lesotho or wherever. So yes, your privacy policy very important, cookie policy very important. Definitely get the NDPB license and show that checklist on your website, so that your end users can be very trusting of your services. Something else to speak through as well that I didn't mention. Again, I wish I had known it was till one, but something to speak about as well is SCUMO. I don't know if you're aware of the SCUMO license as well. The EFCC presides over that, especially for those who you have to be running a startup that falls under the industries listed under SCUMO, right? And then again, if you're going to be getting money from external investors as well, you want to show that it's legal money. You're not using it for illegal purposes, or it has not been obtained for illegal purposes. So as a startup, you should actually obtain your SCUMO certificate and appoint someone within your team who's going to act as a compliance officer and will make reports to the SCUMO office under the EFCC. And I say this now because we have had instances of clients who have been invited by the EFCC quite a number of times because of this issue. And a lot of the times it's not about they themselves as the founders. It's about, maybe someone who has used their platform, especially for fintech startups, someone who has used their platform for whatever purpose that they may have little control to. What else have I not touched on, Ayo?
Well, I think you've done well, and I think that that's what I wanted to hear. So again, I see situations around founders not having the knowledge, especially early stage founders, not knowing how to go about this. Is this something that the legal team would say, okay, you want to build your startup in fintech, the fintech space, for instance. So these are the things that we think that you should do.
Yeah, like legal provides tailored legal we provide tailored legal support to our clients regardless of their industry. It has to be tailored, keyword tailored, because there are different things that are required across industries. There was something I was trying to remember when I spoke about SCUMO, because okay, I mentioned something about external funding. Yes, I'm trying to remember something because that hasn't popped up on my slide. Well, okay, thank you, Shola. So Shola just shared the link to who needs a SCUMO certificate. Quite a number of industries, including law firms, actually, and that's not supposed to be obtainable, but lawyers are fighting it. But yeah, does
Well,
anyone have any
when
other
you sit on
question?
deals that involve money, don't you need a license as well as a lawyer?
A SCUMO certificate?
Yes, as well, yeah.
No, because lawyers are held to a very different standard. Like you do something wrong and you're off, your license is revoked and all of that, right? So there's a whole lot of scrutiny because we have a body that regulates us. So I see quite a number of lawyers, fighting the whole SCUMO thing and all of that. Again, because the laws allow for us to also maintain funds for our clients, right? So where we can have like a client account where clients can actually put some money and things like that. And so in instances like that, SCOMO will require us to, or the EFC will require us to make certain reports and all of that. And then there's the issue of confidential information as well, which we are bound by to our clients. So attorney-client privileges. So there's quite some overlap, and that's why some lawyers are actually fighting against it.
All right. Thank you, Karen. Thank you everyone for joining the call. We'll call it a day today. It's been a worthwhile session. Thank you for taking time to speak to us. We would love to have you some other time, where we're doing some deep dive into several aspects, maybe majorly fundraising.
Yeah, fundraising and industry-specific conversations.
Conversations, yeah.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much and have a great day, everyone.